Greetings, Earthlings! Welcome back to 7th Street, and welcome to my brand new movie room. Yeah, I just moved, and I got this brand new big giant room where I can put up my green screen and have all of my movie shelves. I mean, they stretch that way. I'll definitely have to make a video on my new movie room. But anyway, since I moved in, I didn't have internet, so I wasn't able to do videos, and I was kind of forced to just go back through my collection. And I decided to watch some movies that I've given multiple opportunities to, but for some reason have never clicked with me. And it just gave me an idea for a new series of videos where we take a look at 5 movies that I really want to enjoy. You know, when I watch a movie, it's very rare that I just flat out hate something. You know, I always like to give movies a second chance, you know, and for the most part, I want to be in on it, you know. There are so many movies out there that people like, and for whatever reason, I'm just like, I just don't get it. I don't get why everyone likes it, and I would love to, you know. I don't really have any hatred toward any movie, really. So I thought we would take a look at 5 movies in my collection that I watch repeatedly and I want to like. Okay, number 1 on my list is actually the most recent of the films that I've purchased for my collection, and that would be Vamp. And I've attempted to watch this twice, but I've only actually seen this all the way through just once. This is the brand new Arrow Blu-ray release. It looks great. It's one of those movies, like I said, obviously, that I want to like it so much. Like, the visual style is beautiful, the colors in this film are great, the actors in this film are great. It's got, gosh, what's his name? He plays Long Duck Dong in 16 Candles. Oh, God, where is he? God, I forget his name. But he's always, like, playing, you know, the stereotypical Asian, oh, what's happening, hot stuff? He's always playing that role. And it's really interesting. There's, like, an interview with him on this Blu-ray. And, of course, he doesn't talk like that. He's an American. He's just Asian American, and he was saying in this interview that this was like the first time he was cast in a movie where they didn't ask him to use this ridiculous mock Asian accent, and he was really worried that he wasn't going to be very funny or that audiences wouldn't like him. And, you know, this is sort of a cult classic, so people didn't really. There are just so many things about this movie that I want to like so much. You know, it's like this is probably the one I know the least well, but it's obviously a vampire story about like these college kids, and they go, they're like pledging for a fraternity, I think, and they go to like get a stripper to bring back for the fraternity. If I'm getting the plot wrong, I'm sorry. Like I said, I've only seen this all the way through once, because for whatever reason, it just loses me and just sort of stops being entertaining to me for whatever reason. But like I said, the visual style and the actors and the storyline, it's all there. I want to like it so goddamn much. I remember seeing the trailer for this on a VHS tape that I have. And even then I was like, I bet I would love that movie. And for whatever reason, man, I can't get into Vamp. I don't know why. All of these movies are in no specific order, by the way. This isn't a countdown, and I'm putting Volume 1 on this because I think that there are an endless supply of movies in my collection that could be on this list. Like, I want to get it. Anyway, moving on. Number 4 here is a movie directed by my favorite director of all time, George A. Romero. Rest in peace, my man. And this is one that he says is one of, if not his favorite movies that he's ever made. And, you know, as a George Romero purist, as a little bit of a hipster maybe, it's a movie then that I want so bad to say, God, I love this movie, and people don't get it, and there's such a big part of Romero as an artist within this movie, and there's no doubt that there probably is, but for whatever reason, I just, I want to like it so bad, but it's just, it never has clicked for me, and that's George A. Romero's Knight Riders. And God, I give this movie so many chances. I watch this movie all the time thinking that it's gonna click, that finally Knight Riders is gonna become like my favorite movie of all time. But it just never does. And it's got a great cast in it. It's got Ed Harris and Tom Savini. It also stars George Romero's wife at the time, Chris Romero. It's got this fantastic cast, and it's got a really kind of wacky storyline where it's obviously sort of like, the script is definitely Romero kind of writing about himself and being this indie filmmaker and making movies for the love of making movies, and then it becomes like a business, and it's like, because the movie is really weird. It's about this like a Renaissance fair that's going around, and Ed Harris and all the other guys like Tom Savini, they do like this like Knights of the Round Table thing with motorcycles, and they're always jousting, and Ed Harris is like the king now, you know, because he like wins all the goddamn time. I am saying his name right. Yep, Ed Harris. And yeah, they're like, he's winning all the time, so that makes him king of all these, like, freaks that really believe in this Renaissance fair, but, you know, to the outside world, nobody really gives a shit, and what is he really the king of? None of it means anything, and Ed Harris finds himself, like, kind of becoming disillusioned with the whole Renaissance fair. Like, you know, he used to do it just because he loved doing it, and now it's become a business to him, and his heart isn't in it, and he's like trying to like reconnect with, you know, the original joy that he used to feel when he did this. And it's clearly Romero talking about his own film career up to this point, because when he got this 3-picture deal in which he made Knight Riders, it was like the biggest deal he'd ever gotten up to that point, and he was kind of going Hollywood, you know. He got the deal because of Dawn of the Dead, and this was like his passion project out of the 3. You know, Salah Hassanin, who's the executive producer on this, gave him a 3-picture deal after he saw Dawn of the Dead. And one of the rules was that Romero had to make a sequel. He had to make another zombie film. And that was, you know, kind of like disillusioning to Romero. So he knew he had to do Day of the Dead no matter what. And then he did Creepshow with some of that money with Stephen King. And this was the one out of the 3 that was like his passion project. It was like, you know, it's about him. And I don't know. I just don't get it. I'm just not as into it as I should be. As a Romero purist, I'm just not as into Knight Riders. I don't know what it is about it. It's maybe a little too long for me, and just kind of out there, you know? I mean, it's like a movie about people who do this weird Renaissance fair. It's just not like an idea that you could like pitch to someone. It's totally like the only way he could have made this fucking movie is to get a 3-picture deal where he could sort of make a movie or two, you know, that was just his. He could do whatever he fucking wanted with he could do whatever the fuck he wanted with the money. And this is what he came up with. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I want to like it. I watch this movie all the time, and I want to like it so bad. All right, moving on. This is another movie by one of my favorite directors, and I've mentioned this a couple of times now, that I want to like this movie. I do, because he's one of my favorite directors, and so many of his fans adore this movie, and bro, I don't get it. I don't get how A Cat in the Brain is some people's favorite Fulci film. Like I've said before, this is sort of like the Godzilla's Revenge of Fulci films. You know, Fulci is just using clip shows of like some of his more like unknown films and some of the movies that he like produced for Italian television. And it's like all about, it's another one kind of like Knight Riders where you get the feeling that Fulci's trying to like give you a little insight as to like how he feels maybe about his own film career. And it stars Fulci himself, and he's a director, and he's directing all these horror movies, and it slowly starts to drive him insane, and he thinks that he's going out killing people. But it turns out that, like, his psychologist is the one that's, like, hypnotizing him, and is the one actually killing people, and it's, like, towards the end of the movie, you kind of go, huh, this is supposed to be a giallo? I thought this was, like, a supernatural thriller, and I don't know. I don't get it. I don't find it particularly entertaining. I go back and forth with whether or not I like this one or Touch of Death more. I mean, it's like that far down on my list. And I want to get it. I watch it, you know, for Fulci's birthday. I always try to, for all of my favorite directors' birthdays, I always try to watch like 3 or 4 of their movies, you know, kind of just like in their honor, you know, it's like kind of like my spiritual thing that I do, like a day of remembrance. And whenever it's Fulci's birthday, I always watch A Cat in the Brain, and I expect to get it every time. Like, this is gonna be the time, man. This is gonna be the time that I watch this movie, and I'm like, I love this movie. I get it now, and it never happens. It never happens. I want to be a gigantic fan of this. I've got this super cool Grindhouse release with the lenticular cover and the booklet on the inside. Man, I dropped some dough on this back in the day. And even then, popped it in, watched it, and thought, God, that was underwhelming. It's just not that good. Alright, the next one on my list here is actually the movie that prompted this video. I just watched this I think about 2 days ago, when I moved into my new place. Girlfriend went to bed. I was just kind of looking around. I was kind of in the mood for like a Hammer movie, maybe, you know, and I was just digging through my collection, and I pulled out this movie, and I was like, oh yeah, I've given this movie 2 chances. When I first bought it, and a couple years later, and I remember just not liking it. But I want to like it so bad. I remember like being kind of stoked when I bought this movie. And that is the Amicus release of The Creeping Flesh with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing. Yeah, this is another movie that like had all these elements to it that I really thought that I might like, or at least a couple elements that I thought would just make this like one of those movies in my collection, or at least movies in my brain that when I would go to like conventions and stuff and people were talking about Hammer films and Peter Cushing and stuff, I'd be like, oh, you know what my favorite is? The Creeping Flesh. This is like such the underdog movie, and I wanted to like this one so bad. But for whatever reason, once again, it just never has clicked. For the 3rd time, this movie has not clicked. I was watching it, really trying to get into it, but man, it just like loses me halfway through it, and then it picks back up at the end. But it's about Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are like these 2 scientists. You know, this is like kind of during like, I guess the 1800s or whatever, like when the other Hammer films are set. And they're doing all this crude science, and they come across this like skeleton of like this monster giant who used to live on the earth centuries ago, and they think that it's like has to do with like the Bible. You know, the Bible talks about giants. And Peter Cushing, in a nutshell, he like discovers that if any liquid touches the skeleton, that like flesh will like, it'll start to like regenerate, and this like giant monster is gonna come back to life. So Peter Cushing takes some precautions, but then he starts like working on like whatever it is. He's like trying to figure out the science of it. And then it just gets into all these subplots, and it just fucking like abandons all of that shit for like an hour. And you deal with Peter Cushing's daughter, who like becomes a psychopath, kind of like her mother, who was put in this institution, and Peter Cushing always told his daughter that she was dead. And then it also deals with Christopher Lee, who runs a sanatorium, and like there's like a prison break, and this like mass murderer gets out, and the police are looking for him, and it's like, okay, when are we getting back to the giant monster? That was like kind of cool. And like I said, the movie starts really well, and then at the end, obviously, the Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing have like this big fight, and Christopher Lee steals the skeleton back, and then on the carriage ride home, he like crashes, and rain gets on it and turns into the monster, and the monster comes back and like drives Peter Cushing insane, so he ends up in a sanatorium. And the monster looks really cool. Like, the bones look really cool. And it's, like, actually kind of creepy. Like, the way it looks. And the beginning and the end of this movie are, like, really good. It's just, like, the vast majority of the middle that just fucking loses me. And it just didn't need any of that stuff. And I wonder sometimes, I wonder now after watching it for the third time, if this maybe started as a short that was like going to be in one of those Amicus anthology films, like Vault of Horror or something like that, and somewhere along the way, one of the studio executives said, oh, you know, that one's really good, we should turn that into a feature, and then they just like put a bunch of bullshit into it, and this is what they ended up getting, just kind of like this mediocre horror flick, because it would have worked really well as a short. If this would have just been the 10 minutes in the beginning and like the 5 to 10 minutes at the end, this would be great. This would be like one of the better shorts in an anthology. But as a feature film, man, it doesn't click for me, and I want it to. I want it to so bad, because there's like so much to it that I think is really cool. And it's funny, back in the day, I used to like save all the receipts and put them in these DVDs, because I have so many movies. I kind of wanted to keep a record of all of my films, like when I bought them. I don't do that as much anymore, but I bought this movie. God, I haven't checked the date on here. Wow. I bought this movie February 28th, 2011 is when I first bought this movie and watched it and was underwhelmed, and it was probably a couple years later that I tried to revisit it, didn't get into it, and now it's April 2019, and I just watched it again and couldn't get into it. So, buddy, I'll see you in a couple more years. Maybe I'll think a little bit more favorably of you then. All right, last movie on this list is another one that obviously I just really want to like, but sometimes this one more than the others, because I waited so long to find a copy of this movie. I remember seeing like advertisements and like or not advertisements, but like I have a bunch of like monster books that I had when I was a kid, and I remember seeing stuff for this movie, and God, I just imagined how cool it must have been. And I had waited forever. You know, I'm not someone that likes to buy movies offline. I gotta find them in the wild. So I waited to find this movie, and I finally did, and this is another one that I'll revisit pretty frequently because I just want it to click, and that is the Hammer film, The Reptile. I've always wanted to like this movie, and I think the opening for it is so cool, with like the guy who's like gasping for air and he's like turning green and he's got like the vampire marks on him. I always want to like this movie every time I watch it. And it really doesn't click. This one was so hyped up for me for a while. I really, really couldn't wait to see this movie. I cannot express that enough. How much I wanted to find a copy of this movie. And when I did, like, my hands started sweating. I was so excited. I don't even think I looked at the price tag at Movie Movers. I just like grabbed it off the shelf and ran up to the counter, and I was like, boom, take my card, just take my money, damn it. Give me this movie. I took it home, I popped it in, I watched it, and I think I remember sort of liking it at first. And then, you know, with a movie like this, that is like kind of goofy fun and I've waited forever to see, it's like one that I'll like, as soon as it's over, man, I'll like watch it again. Fuck that. I'll just put the movie back. I'll just put it on repeat and keep playing the goddamn movie. And, man, as time went on, I just realized that I just didn't like this movie as much as I wanted to. And still to this day, man, it's like I have a lot of my clamshell Hammer films like displayed up on a shelf right off camera. And this is one that's like up on display, like I'm so proud of it. But it's like the movie that I'm like, every time I look at it too, I'm like secretly a little disappointed. You let me down a little bit. So yeah, the Hammer Collections, the Reptile. Fuck, I should go watch this right now. I want it to click. I want to fucking like this movie so bad. Well, there you go. I probably just broke it. So anyways, guys, that was volume 1 of 5 movies that I really want to like. So definitely leave me a comment below letting me know which movies are like that for you. You know, I think we all have movies that we really wanted to like, whether we saw them in the theaters, saw them as a kid, or waited fucking decades to see a movie and then it just let us down. So definitely leave me a comment below. I do want to mention again that the feature film that I directed, that 7th Street Productions made, Jesus I Was Evil, will be having its world premiere at Crypticon Seattle 2019. It's the first weekend of May. You guys should go. There's going to be like celebrities. We go every year. It's a fucking blast, man. We're also playing a short film that I directed called Nectophobia, and we'll kind of be talking with some people a little bit about the next film that I'm writing that I really want to make. I think I'm going to use Nectophobia as kind of like the proof of concept for it, too. But the whole gang will be there, cast and crew, so come out and say hi if you guys are in the area. It's pretty cheap to get in. I'll buy you guys like a beer if you show up and say like, greetings Earthlings, or reference this film or whatever the fuck. But yeah, I'd definitely like to hear from you guys. Make sure that you smash that like button, smash the subscribe button, and share this with your friends. Like if you want to support this channel, the best way that you can do that is just to like share it on Facebook, you know, and you know, you'll find me very appreciative. You know, find me on Facebook, Calvin McCarthy, Calvin Modier McCarthy, but it's spelled like Maury. Anyways, guys, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming. I got another video for this channel that I need to make, like, right fucking now, because I've been way behind the gun. So, yeah, guys, like and subscribe. Until next time.